Happy Easter to all of you! For the occasion, I originally wanted to make a top 10 rabbits or bunnies for this list. However, I always came up short, and I was nowhere near on making a perfect 10. So I figured why not just broaden the subject and include their subspecies, rodents, aka any non-mammal of a subspecies that includes rats, mice, squirrels, hamsters, porcupines, and their relatives distinguished by their strong, constantly growing incisors and no canine teeth. They also constitute the largest order of mammals, thus having this idea. I was actually born during the year of the rabbit, after all. There are still gonna be a cute hopper or two, but working with rodents made things a lot more easier to endure. They all seem to be just as good as those carrot munchers anyway, so let's start hopping. Alright, this little rodent just barely made the cut on this list. KO only took the bottom spot, as he's the mouse with great speed and used as a decoy. But he does lack endurance as well as precision. He starts with a measly few bars of energy, and he seems to be more vulnerable than the other heroes. And when he lands his bombs mostly on walls or in the air, they're not very reliable. Being close to enemies has always been risky, and I hardly ever use him. The one positive is he's small enough to traverse through narrow passages that are virtually inaccessible. Unfortunately, since he was once a kind and curious wizard, he was accidentally turned into a mouse as he was chasing after Gam the Golem, who stole the potion from KO's lab. This was a very tough decision on making him as part of this top 10, and he hardly made it as the bottom entry. If there's any underappreciated character that stands out well from the Mario series, it's definitely Mouser. Ever since I first encountered him in his awesome boss battles in Super Mario Bros. 2, each battle will keep you on your toes, leaving not even a second to waste. Mouser is fast and skillful with bombs, and he was the prominent rank of Ward's henchman in Subcon, even though his attacks themselves are rhythmic. Here's an interesting fact. Mouser has appeared both in Super Mario Bros. 2, as well as its base game, Yumi Kojo Doki Doki Panic. As I stated in my underappreciated video games, I stood by it over the other Nintendo sequels, and Mouser was certainly one of those reasons. I always loved Mouser, whether it be his looks, his swift brawls, or even when he became a henchman for Bowser since he was no longer in the Dream World. As in the Dream World, he only appears in Worlds 1-3, 3-3, and 5-3. Nice pattern counting down for both games. I wish he was highlighted more in the franchise, aside from being a sticker or spirit in Smash, or even a side character for the lesser praised installments. Either way, he is one rowdy rodent. Next up are the Woolies. Now just to be clear here, I mean those from Bubsy, not those ugly mammoth-like beasties from Samurai Jack. These critters may just be classified as aliens, yet still they possess traits to anthropomorphic jackrabbits. And they tend to jump much like them too. Plus they always have that signature silly sneeze they give out. These cute little troublemakers had landed on Earth and are always hell-bent on stealing all the yarn. They can just be almost as greedy as King Dedede when he steals Kirby's own food. Bubsy then confronts them in every single level in the game, and those poor rabbits get stomped on. I feel sorry for them sometimes. These guys are capable at almost everything a human can do, whether it be throwing things like eggs, piloting their own ships like us driving a car or flying a plane, or wearing unique clothes and suiting the environment. They're run by their Siamese twin ruler, Polly and Esther. I know the inhabitants of Rayon seem more like aliens due to their so-called tentacles on their heads, but look how they hop and sneeze. Ever since I was a kid, I classified them to be closer to rabbits, even now. They're just too adorable to pass up, thus taking the 8th spot, since I only played one game featuring them.
Put your right foot forward, put your left foot out, do the bunny hop, 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 hop.
Up next we have Cream the Rabbit from the Sonic series. She's always been one of the most irresistible characters in the Juggernaut, because she is cute as a button, innocent, young, cheerful, fun to use, and more of a people pleaser. Contrast to my favorite character, Tails, she flies to great heights flopping her ears, and she first became a playable character in Sonic Advance 2, set for beginners. Though she did make an unexpected cameo in Sonic Adventure DX, and she was the only welcoming addition to Team Rose and Sonic Heroes. Cream is easily likable as any other rabbit, as she's happy, pleasant to be around, cute, knowledgeable, polite, adventurous, and is always willing to stand up to her friends no matter what, despite being more of a pacifist. She abhors sadness and violence, and she pretty much functions as a gentle soul before push comes to shove, and honors her enemies before a conflict, like the classic Kung Lao. But once you cross her, she won't hesitate to use her close chow partner Cheats, and her exceptional prowess to show some manners. Do not let her kiddiness deceive you. Sometimes her sweetness can rub off on you, and I wish I can be as easygoing as she is like I used to be. But innocence tends to fade away over time, and I can be as edgy as Shadow. Nevertheless, she's still a nice, adorable distraction and seems to melt your angsts whenever you see and play as her.
Dance is new creation, it's the new sensation. Do the bunny hop, 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 hop.
Naming Way was just impossible to leave off the list. This versatile rodent has been a staple NPC in the Final Fantasy Juggernaut, and it all started with my all-time favorite installment. In the original version, Naming Way's main purpose was to rename Cecil and his teammates multiple times. But ever since the DS version, he realized he can't fulfill the sole purpose of his own name. Freaked out, he decided to go on a soul-searching journey throughout the world, and Cecil encounters him numerous times throughout his quest of redemption. Much like the Woolies, Naming Way was also an extraterrestrial, as he and his kind, the Hummingways, were from the artificial moon the Lunarians inhabited. Instead of changing names on many occasions, he switches to different roles while he gives the players side quests. From a cartographer, to a musician, to a journalist, a recorder, an outdoorsman, until finally taking a nostalgic journey around the world, gifting the player augments and bonuses once each task was completed. He seems like an interesting minor character, even inspiring me to add him to one of my Final Fantasy IV fics, as Redeeming Way inspired by Cecil's trials. He doesn't seem to be like an easy character to work with, as he hardly even made it to the top 5.
All join in the fun, father, mother, son, do the bunny hop, 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 hop.
Bumper the Badger barely qualified for this list, despite me playing only one game he stars in. Bumper is cute and has a hilarious voice to complement. I may consider him to be rare, as I hardly seen anyone of his own kind. He may not be one of my mains, unlike Tip Top and Timber, but he's still pretty versatile and has a great sense of speed, if only his grip should improve much. He may even be a main to Customar in that regard. He seems to be an interesting fella, even playing his steel guitar in his own theme like Banjo, playing a banjo in his. And I wish I'd seen him more in future titles. Better than the downfall of Conker and that flinty Pipsy anyway. Heck, as a kid, I always fantasized him to be a companion to Panthro, and be just like a handyman while having a great skill of ingenuity. Just like KO, Bumper the Badger barely qualified to make it on here, though his traits were good enough to make it to the top 5. Speaking of rarities, on account it's from the defunct company on being rare of his own kind, Bottles the Short-Sighted Mole made it here. There aren't as many moles, let alone as great and iconic as him, as he happens to be both Banjo and Kazooie's mentor throughout their quest to save his best friend Tooty and conquer over Gruntilda. Bottles was just too cute, heroic, knowledgeable, and has the nerve to counter over Kazooie's foul beak. He does teach the duo many useful techniques, and isn't very preachy on doing them, unlike his unfair older brother Jam Jars. And he may seem to be on the fragile side, which is why we never see him in action, and not leave his moleholes for long. Although tragedy struck in Banjo-Tooie as Bottles was ambushed by Gruntilda's invasion and Mumbo was unable to save him, with he as well as the heroic duo bearing witness. I was hoping Bottles shall assist the duo again, but the dreaded drill sergeant had to take charge in his own paws. It was just heart-wrenching to see him go, much like my other faves in Mortal Kombat. And that was what made him only take the 4th spot. Finally! My main mice Throttle makes his way onto the list as one of the top 3. Ever since I was young when I first played the SNES game, I was always enthralled with him. As the natural-born leader of the biker mice as well as an exceptional racer, with great drifting and an effective laser gun to hit opponents. Plus he's got a spunky personality with a touch of tenderness and excellent authority. It's no wonder he was the second best to the Freedom Fighter's mentor Stoker, and the mate to Stoker's niece, Carbine. Throttle lost his eyesight on account of Dr. Carbuncle, as he, Moto, and Vinny escape from the Plutarchian War on Mars and landed in Chicago. Thankfully, unlike Kenshi, he wears a nice pair of sunglasses that helps with his impaired sight, as well as enhancing his other senses, like his smell, as he was knowledgeable of the Plutarchians' corrosive stench, to the point on identifying imposters, much like Wolverine in that regard. Throttle is one of the most respectable leaders I'd encountered in gaming, and he's certainly just as cute as the other entries. He's very well-rounded and adaptable, as he leads the soulful Moto and brash Vinny while he keeps his bros in check. And his voice actor Rob Paulsen fits him fairly well, like a comfortable biker glove. Unfortunately, it can be just as short-lived. I was really upset on giving up the SNES game, all cause of him alone, as well as finally reaching the end of the series when the mice, as did Charlie, finally leave Earth after overcoming the Plutarchians and Catatonians, while Vinny lost his loved one of the destruction of the Regenerator. In closing, Throttle has always been one of the very impactful characters that gives me inspiration and motivation, and that is what really makes him so special. No rodent list shall ever be complete without mentioning the heart of the Star Fox team, Peppy Hare. This guy is a true veteran that should never be ignored. At first I kind of figured he'd be some kind of alien, let alone an anthropomorphic in the OG game, though it was pre-established like his surname. His service and bio received a complete overhaul by 64, as James's and General Pepper's most trusted member of the team, as they were sent to Venom 5 years after Andross's exile. Thanks to the sudden betrayal of Pigma, as implied later in the first Starwolf battle, the duo was captured, and Peppy had exceptional knowledge allowing him to survive and escape from certain death. He later stepped down as the experienced leader due to his unsurpassable skills, and allowed Fox to take the mantle. Since then, he became a fatherly figure to both him, Falco, Slippy, and others. And he's known to carry on famous catchphrases like
"Never give up! Trust your instinct!"
and
"Do a barrel roll!"
Aileron roll!
Much like Throttle, he's very encouraging even to Fox and helped him grow as an effective leader, while he seized victory. Though Peppy has retired as a pilot after that, and became a cartographer much like Naming Way. Finally, he approached advanced age and used his sharp wits and ingenuity to prevent his demise by the Aperoids in every step of the way. It was quite a relief his daughter Lucy took over as one of the new kid cadets. Peppy has become one of the most iconic rodents in gaming history due to his legendary strategies, status, and the fact he was voiced by the late Rick May. Rest in peace. Originally, he was gonna be in first place, but only one rambunctious rodent just whizzed past him as fast as warp speed. Alright, we counted down the top 9 representatives for Easter. But before we should make a bunny hop to number 1, let's bring out some honorable mentions.
no thing like me except me.
89P13, who calls himself Rocket, hops, skips, and jumps his way to the top spot. Rocket the Raccoon...
Call me a raccoon!
Sorry. Rocket, the best thief in the universe, happened to be an experiment by low-life humans from an institution in Half-World. He was an extraterrestrial, much like Namingway, Peppy, and Throttle, taken there to enhance his intelligence and prowess. However, as he was being abused by countless merciless tests, he and his love interest, Lila, barely escaped with the Otter as a heart-wrenching sacrifice to him. Later on, he met his partner Groot, and became a scoundrel and thief. But by the time he met Star-Lord and helped Gamora, Drax, and the rest of the group escape from the kiln, due to his advanced knowledge and outstanding attentiveness, he became a valuable asset to the team, albeit foul-mouthed and sometimes chaotic. Since then, he was instantly my favorite Guardian in the MCU, as well as the 2 spin-off games. And he very much reminds me of the Star Fox team so often. He's trigger-happy, arrogantly cocky, hilarious, adorable, and very relatable to me in some aspects. He became an essential engineer designing weapons and gadgets, even one to overthrow an interstellar tyrant, as well as being Star-Lord's rival. Think of him as a mix between the charming though unadulterated version of Conqueror to an effective marksman and weapon manufacturer like the Fur Fighters, and an ingenuity of Peppy despite his hot-headedness, and the facts he has OCD, has worked and related with organisms having multiple disabilities, and was created by vile and brutal humans.
I didn't ask to get made! I didn't ask to be torn apart and put back together over and over, turned into some little monster!
Side note, both he and Star-Lord are still bitter and friendly rivals, even when it comes to not just in bounty hunting, but also in F-Zero racing. He may not always have the best judgment, and he may be as hard as nails, as he's obsessive on money and going to dark dealers which conflict the squad, but dare I say, Rocket is by far the most skilled, cunning, and ruthless thief in the galaxy, even over those like Zidane and Kasumi. That deadly monster can absolutely decimate anyone who dares to exceed him, even those as powerful as Thanos. I swear, Marvel has created an absolute genius, who is loosely based on the Beatles oldie. I'm the Ekron writer, and Rocket has launched his way to my utmost favorite rascal in video games. Have a happy Easter!
Finish him.